Hi everyone. I'm with Luke Gaskell, the Vice County Recorder for Peeblesshire, and Luke is one of our exhibitors this year, and has produced a very interesting poster, which shows he's been really busy during lockdown. Luke, tell me what you were up to.
Well, because of the COVID restrictions that the government put in place, we were encouraged not to go too far from home. And I thought it'd be fun to have a look at a bit of ground relatively near to where I live and really explore it, have a real good look at it and see what was there. And I chose a square in Selkirkshire, which is perhaps 5 miles from home. And what I did was when I'd finished work or I had a couple of hours off, I'd get in the car or on the bike and I could go over there, spend an hour or so in a monad, make a list of all the plants that I saw and come back again. And so it was just a way of getting away, putting my troubles behind me, getting out in the sunshine and enjoying myself. And it's actually produced some quite interesting results.
It's good for the soul, isn't it, to get out, and especially just now. But yes, you collected a lot of records, didn't you? How many records? How many monads did you get into?
Well, the 10 by 10 kilometre square doesn't have a full set of monads because some of it's in Roxburghshire and I didn't do those. So there were about 75 monads available and I did 43 of them. And I collected about 7,500 records and 620 odd species or subspecies.
Wow, that's amazing in one 10-kilometre square, isn't it? So what was your most exciting find, perhaps?
I don't know whether one thing particularly stands out, but there were, as you would expect, there were quite a lot of casual and invasive species new records because the area hasn't been particularly surveyed from that point of view. So they're perhaps not that interesting to some people, but they're quite fun. There are a few species which have turned up again. You'll see from the exhibit that there was a groundbreaking book by Druce and Ida Hayward. It was published in 1919 called The Inventive Flora of Tweedside, and some of the species that they found from wool aliens in Galashiels again in much the same area. They will have been missing in the intervening years, but they've probably been reintroduced. So it's interesting to see them back again.
Yes, you're a farmer, and so you're particularly interested in arable weeds. And
yes.
you did make some exciting rediscoveries there as well, didn't you?
Yes, I mean, I did particularly look for any area that was still being cultivated. The problem at the moment is that farming's just become too efficient. The tools and chemicals that farmers have available to them make it very, very difficult for annual arable weeds to survive. The typical grain field or even forage field is very short of weedy species. So these things are just hanging on around the edge. But excitingly, species such as Stachys avensis, field woundwort,
it's always nice to see, isn't it?
It's wonderful when you do find it, just hanging on around the edges of a barley field and in a rough area around a manure heap in another part of the county. That's hasn't been seen recently, but there were a few previous records, but very few. Things like Bugloss and Schuser avensis have turned up again, hasn't been seen for 25 years or something like that. Greenfield Speedwell, Veronica agrestis, records that it could be extinct if you don't look for it, but if you really search the area, some of these species are still just hanging on. If we changed the farming methods a bit and allowed a bit more weed around the edge of fields, I think some of these would make a comeback. But the way things are going, in 20 years' time, I think there'll be rather fewer of them to find.
Yeah. Okay, final question. It's always very exciting rediscovering something that hasn't been recorded for hundreds of years. So what was the greatest discovery after a long period of absence that you made?
Well, the one that I've put on the poster, which has been very pleasing to Rod Corner, who with Jeff Wattles, the recorder for Selkirkshire, is Sedum villosum, hairy stonecrop. This is a species which is definitely declining. I think it's under pressure, and as I've said on the poster, there's a lot of forestry going on in the uplands at the moment, and this is a real threat to sedum sites. But a new site has turned up for this species, never been recorded in that 10k square before. Well, no, it has been recorded once in that 10k square, but not anywhere near where I found it. And it's nice to see that some of these things are still present. It's much commoner over in Peeblesshire where I am, but that's a bit of a stronghold for it. On these more peripheral areas, it's definitely disappearing.
There's a beautiful little plant, isn't it?
It is, and we need to protect these sites. If we can go out and record where things are, and then let people like Forest Scotland know, then there is a chance that they could be left unplanted or protected in some way, and then we can hang on to these species.
Yeah. Luke, thank you very much. That was great. And to everybody watching, please have a look at Luke Gaskell's exhibit on the SBC microsite. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll speak to Ian Strawn, BSBI Vice County Recorder for West Inverness. Ian, we've just got a couple of minutes to ask you about your exhibit. Thank you very much for that, by the way. It's a lovely photograph of Melanopirum sylvaticum, a small cowheat you've included in it. So I recommend everyone goes and has a look. So my first question, how did you know it was there in the first place? It's such a small flower.
Yes. Well, I happened to be walking the dog along the path along the bank of the River Arkaig, and there's lots of Melanopirum pratense, the common cowheat, all along there, and I just was looking just in the off chance all the time, and I just happened to spot these very strong sort of egg yellow flowers just beside the path, actually, mixed in with the pratense, and immediately thought, oh, can't believe it. But
and timing is very important, isn't it?
Very important, that's right. So if it's not flowering, it can be really difficult to spot, especially when if it's in, as it often is, in a mixed population with common cowheat. So there've been a lot of mistaken records in the past because the common cowheat does have a brighter yellow form, but it always has a relatively long tubular flower, whereas the sylvaticum is much more of a triangular flower like this with a downturned lower lip.
I've seen it growing with bracken before, well, under bracken before, and I always wonder about that and worry that it might become outshaded. Is that a fear you have?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think because it's an annual, it needs relatively big ground to germinate, I presume. So the bracken maybe helps by keeping the other vegetation down. I'm quite supportive of bracken, actually. I don't see it as a major problem, especially in the west, where it tends not to form these really dense stands. It does in places, but it is a natural component of woodland, and Alamparum sylvaticum is a woodland plant. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it was growing with in an area that had been covered with rhododendron, but had been cleared. And
well,
Gaultheria was starting
yes,
to invade.
Yes, rhododendron has been very widespread in the general area, not this particular patch, which is just beside the river. And most of the woodland there is amenity conifers, some really big trees, all sorts of interesting species actually. But there is this one patch, remnant with birch, and there's a big oak as well. But they have been controlling rhododendron elsewhere on the estate quite hard. But the Gaultheria Shallon seems to be really expanding, perhaps with the reduction in the rhododendron, and it's certainly seems to be colonizing this particular area where the cow wheat is. So it's a bit of a worry. So I'm in touch with the estate about it, and hopefully we'll do something about it.
Yeah. So I'm sure there must be other populations of small cow wheat around Scotland waiting to be discovered. What are your top tips for finding small cow wheat if you want to go try?
Yes, you really have to look at the right time of year, which is sort of late June, early July, when it's flowering. It definitely it doesn't like such acidic ground as the Pratense seems to be able to grow in.
Here it was growing together with Pratense.
It was, but there were. If you looked very closely, there were little patches with the sylvaticum and others with the Pratense, and I think it's and associated with the sylvaticum were some more mesotrophic herbs, things like bird's foot trefoil and Hyperchirus radicata, these sorts of things. And I think it was the pockets of river gravel that have been washed up, and that's maybe giving the right conditions for the sylvaticum. But certainly it tends to be in slightly richer ground than the Pratense.
In a lot of the sites I know it from, it's growing beside waterfalls in north-facing gorges. I think that's perhaps something to do with humidity. The Burks Aberfeldy site is a classic example of that, but there are other sites like that in Strathfarrar, for example.
Indeed, yes, that's right. Yes, I think I guess it's to do with germination, particularly. It does seem to like damp conditions like that. Yes, indeed, by waterfalls and gorges. But this site was, it always seems to be close to water, I think. So this was on the banks of the river, and there was indeed some plants right on the edge of the water. So, yeah.
Great. Ian, thank you very much for taking time out to do that. And if you've yet to see Ian's exhibit, please have a look at the exhibits page in the microsite. Thank you, everyone.